know, Ambazonia is not a dream, it's a reality. And let's talk to Ambazonia. Ambazonia, you were lost and abused. Now you are found. We have found you. We pledge our lives to set you free, forever free. We won't let you down. And this is our promise to you. Nobody can ever take this promise away, and we will not budge one step back.
No, 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 no. Come on now. Amazonian, that's what we are. Amazon. Help me, Amazonian. Amazonian.
Yeah, of course, we love Ambazonia. Happy Sunday, everyone. You are welcome to the JMA Connections this Sunday, which is the third day of the month of May 2026. Decidedly, the year is moving and moving pretty fast. So I want to extend hearty regards to all and sundry. I want to extend hearty regards to everyone on the territory. If you are on the territory of the Southern Cameroons, of course, the former UN Trust territory of British Southern Cameroons, if that's where you are right at this moment, at the start of this broadcast, accept hearty salutations from me, John AKUROH, from the JMA Connections this day. I also want to salute in the diaspora all of those who, despite the very tough times, despite the changing circumstances, and despite the pressure, are continuing to hold strong, to hold tight, and continuing to remain glued to the dream of the people of the Southern Cameroons for freedom. Accept hearty salutations from me. I know it's not easy, but we just have to continue being strong, because this is a very noble cause. I know we are seeing things that are happening all over the place, like what is happening in South Africa, the things that are happening to us all over the world, and recognizing that home is absolutely where the heart is, and that there is nowhere ever whatsoever that will ever replace home. The reason we must continue to fight very hard to make sure that we secure our homeland. I was last on TikTok 2 days ago, where I announced that the Saturday, that was yesterday, the 2nd of May, we're going to have a very important outing. But due to circumstances beyond my control, we could not have that broadcast. And of course, I'm here today with that very important broadcast. As you can see, I'm talking here about Cameroon's apocalyptic descent that is accelerating. And this is a totally new reign. There's something totally new happening in La République du Cameroun now. And the thing that is happening in La République du Cameroun right now is going to, precipitate the country towards that precipice that we have talked about. From the look of things, Cameroon's apocalyptic descent is absolutely inevitable. I want to say inevitable, not inevitable. Inevitable at this point. And it's something that I think the people of the Southern Cameroons need to know, especially our people who are still on the territory of La République du Cameroun. I started talking about this a very long time ago, telling our people to be preparing to move, because the cities of Douala and Yaoundé will become very difficult for people to find their ways out of. So this is something that we need to know. So bear this at the back of your mind. That particular disaster is not far. That disaster is not far. But before I delve into that very important conversation, I'd like to remark that, everyone, a lot of people, especially in La République du Cameroun, and those members of the CPDM crime syndicate who continue to hallucinate about the return to normalcy in the Southern Cameroons, were expecting that after the Pope's visit, there will be some unexplained calm. Suddenly people will begin to say, okay, let's just surrender to slavery and servitude for the people of, for those members of the CPDM crime syndicate. But unfortunately, things have rather taken a turn for the worse. Things have taken a turn for the real worse. because shortly after the Pope returned, the speed of killings has increased tremendously. And besides, the soldiers of La République du Cameroun falling, I mean, here and there, literally on a daily basis, we noticed that there was a massacre, a serious massacre in Zermian, in Jakiri local government area of the southern Cameroons. And there's been so much talk on social media about this. The spin is real. You see, La République du Cameroun is trying to spin everything to give the impression at the end of the day that every single civilian in Jakiri is a freedom fighter carrying a gun, including women. Everyone in Jakiri, per the government of La République du Cameroun, is what they will call an amber boy or amber girl. And each one plays a specific role. If you are a woman, you have a specific role. If you're a musician, you have a specific role. If you're whatever, you have a specific role. I mean, the spinning is just so unimaginable. And I think, candidly, social media actors do not appear able to be helping this whole situation out, because they're not taking time to conduct thorough investigations into some of the things that they pour out there. And when there is that kind of cacophony, La République du Cameroun tends to think that they can absolutely benefit from it. I saw this press release from the Ministry of Defense of La République du Cameroun regarding what happened in Zermian. And, it's really amazing what was said in there. I know we have all seen this, but a few portions of it interest me. Although I prefer to look at the French version, because the English version that they published was a bit truncated. Because he said this. C'est le ministère de la Défense communique aux premières heures du dimanche 26 avril 2026 sur renseignement de la population. Les forces de défense et de sécurité ont conduit une importante opération de ratissage dans la localité de Zermiam, arrondissement de Jakiri, département du Bouy. L'objectif de cette opération était de neutraliser de dangereux terroristes de diverses factions réunis sous le commandement du pseudo-général Capo pour préparer des attaques violentes à exécuter dans la région. Now look at this. You see, just in the first paragraph, you understand that this doesn't make any sense at all. Because at the same time that they are concluding that the entire population of this Nzeremiam, why not even Jakiri as a whole, are freedom fighters, they are saying that they got a tip-off from the same population, which is, first of all, already quite contradictory. That's not just all. But the next thing he says is that there were various factions of, terrorists and all whatnot that gathered together in Zermiam for the purpose of planning attacks, on the entire region. But what we learn is that what was happening in Zermiam was a cultural festival. This was a cultural festival. So if at all freedom fighters have to plan an attack, do they need to come and sit with the open population in fiesta, dancing and everything in order to plan those attacks? Anyone who has done military strategy, even for 1 second, or who has studied guerrilla warfare, which is exactly what the Southern Cameroon's freedom fighters, all of them, what they are now executing, you understand that this does not add up, not even for 1 second. Because you know the importance of this particular paragraph is the Ministry of Defense of La République du Cameroun is trying to come up with a reason for why there could have been a lot of people at that particular scene. Number one. Then number two, he wants to give the impression that everyone who was there was a freedom fighter because they were there for one objective. It was to plan an attack. So therefore, the notion that this was a cultural festival at which trigger-happy soldiers of La République du Cameroun showed up and opened fire on the population is exactly what the Ministry of Defense is trying to disculpate. But everyone knows, we have read from the Cultural and Development Organization, from Zeremiam, from Jakiri, saying that there was actually a cultural festival going on. So you see, from this particular premise, you begin by understanding that this report can never have any merit. Because if the premise is wrong, then whatever you will discuss will not make any sense. He said, à l'approche de la section d'infiltration, des terroristes lourdement armés ont ouvert un feu nourri pour stopper leur progression. La riposte appropriée et professionnelle des éléments des forces de défense et de sécurité a permis de les mettre hors d'état de nuit, avec à la clé les résultats ci-après. So he sees, this was an ambush. And it says they ambushed them, but they opened fire on them. Again, like I said, my greatest focus is even on paragraph number 1. Because all the things that he will say here, 3 women, he say, trois terroristes de genre féminin, logisticiennes aux ordres du pseudo-général Capo. So what he's saying, after explaining that this was a gathering to plan attacks on the region, he now comes down to break down to like say, okay, the number of people who were killed, they say 11 people were killed. 14 people were killed. 11 were males and 3 were females. And now he has to explain. For the females, this is what he says. 3 terroristes de genre féminin, logisticiennes aux ordres du pseudo-général Capo. De nombreux terroristes en fuite et activement recherchés. Then it says bilan, plusieurs armes de guerre et accessoires d'armement, 12 engins explosifs improvisés et whatever. What I'm trying to say is, in all of this, you see what he says there, that the 3 women who were killed were in charge of logistics for the boys. I don't recall the last time that we have seen cans and all one of these people, including women. And of these women, one of them has been particularly identified. This year has been clearly identified by the people as being someone who definitely does not have any form of connections with the freedom fighters. For the other 2, nothing has even been said about them because I guess work is still ongoing to absolutely identify them. And then he says, le renforcement des contrôles sur les nœuds routiers environnement par les forces de défense et de sécurité ont permis, avec le concours citoyen de la population, l'interpellation de 2 des fugitifs blessés. Il s'agit de Dikaka Priestley, 16 ans, garde du corps du pseudo-général Capo. L'Aigne Mirabel Kefiski, compagne du pseudo-général Capo et logisticienne principale chargée de convoyer l'armement du groupe dissimulé dans des sacs de vivres frais. And then, in fact, that's what I'm trying to explain here is, this community as a whole has just one objective. That objective is try to give the impression that all of those who were killed had something to do with the freedom fighters, which is absolutely untrue. Absolutely untrue. I've even seen the picture of one of the gentlemen who were killed, on Facebook, published by a former colleague at ACN TV, Lawrence Kikishi, and which the write-up is saying that guy is a musician, and is a musician who is being paid by General Capo. Oh my goodness. They really have musicians? They have nightclubs, they have fiestas that they operate, and so this musician moves around playing for them, and he says that he's being paid by General Capo. Where does he get money to pay a musician? What do they need a musician for? These are some of the questions that you ask. And then, before you know it, you just realize that this is absolutely gibberish. La République du Cameroon is always involved in this kind of cover-up. And this cover-up does not help. Because at the same time while they are doing all this, you don't see on the other side that the people are targeting civilians. I saw this picture, and there are many others of soldiers of La République du Cameroon being brought down, weapons collected, but I've not seen any place where they have been trapped in the midst of civilians. I've noticed that the Southern Cameroon's freedom fighters, whenever they go to a place to attack, because often they prefer to attack checkpoints at which they consider that this army of occupation stand there to harass the population and collect money from people, to even kidnap others on grounds they don't have ID cards or they don't have one form of documentation or the other. In some circumstances, they have shown up at checkpoints and found out that those who that were at those checkpoints were not only soldiers, and they could not attack because they did not want to, hurt any civilian among, who found themselves among those soldiers. And the soldiers or the Army of Occupation of the République du Cameroun are aware of this. That's why too often they would take civilians, mainly southern Cameroonians, and use them as human shield. This is a clear indication of their understanding of the humanistic approach by the Southern Cameroon's freedom fighters, of their understanding of the rules of engagement in this kind of matters. So they know this, that's why they take civilians and use them as human shields. At some checkpoints, they make sure they have a lot of civilians sitting there with them by force until they complete their missions and leave. Because they are aware that as long as those civilians are there, the freedom fighters will not attack them because they don't want to hurt civilians. Yet they come and tell you that a whole cultural festival was organized with civilians just to plan attacks on the region. So these are things that should normally, be completely shelved. Anyone with, a right frame of mind will not entertain any of those inanities. Of course, they are who they are, and we know them for that. So that said, let's move into the view of our conversation of today. La République du Cameroun is in a different kind of crisis right now. A completely different kind of crisis at this point in time that we are talking. That crisis is actually at the highest level. You will recall that in one of my outings here, I said that the last standing institution, if it's man, we'll say last man standing, but this institution, I said the last standing institution in La République du Cameroun, the very last one that had not been completely decimated, that was the institution of the presidency of the republic. That was functioning a bit somehow, is now completely overwhelmed. It's now completely down. The presidential palace at Etudi has become a scene for all kinds of horrible things you can imagine. I bet you a scene of things that if these things were to be broadcast out there, the things are happening there, and people see, you'll be wondering if there is any hope for anyone in that country. You'll be wondering how the place manages to still stand in these circumstances. Because as it stands, not only is the presidential palace divided, that you have the civil cabinet run by Vondo Ayolo, and of course, therefore, by the Bulus from the south, and the Secretariat General run by the Nangas of the center, where Chantal Biya comes from. Chantal Biya, of course, and Ferdinand Gongo, and all of the others. Do not forget that even in the civil cabinet, they made sure to put someone who is from Nanga to oversee exactly what Vondo Ayolo is doing there. That's why we have Oswald Baboke there as the deputy director of the civil cabinet. And so the situation is so great. If it ended along those lines, it could have made some sense. But right now, within the presidential family itself, the fire is unimaginable. The fire is totally unimaginable. At some point, Chantal Biya pretended to have some kind of chemistry going on between her and Frank Biya. But in recent times, that chemistry, that public show, that that make-believe kind of thing is completely dead. Everyone has gone totally nuclear right now. Just so you know, because some people had doubted this before, and some people were wondering if it were really true, or that Chantal just had that kind of influence that the woman could have over her husband. But very few would have recognized that the real president right now is Chantal Biya. That Chantal Biya had simply taken over power and transformed Paul Biya. Paul Biya. Oh my goodness. Long Leon transformed Paul Biya into a punching bag of insults, of rants, and of ultimatums, one after the other. This photograph, this picture came up at some time. And people were like, oh wow, what a very beautiful picture. But what people did not see in this particular picture was that the photographer that was taking this picture, or that took this picture, was seeking to tell a story, a clear story of what exactly is operating now. When you look at those pictures, you look at the way they are sized and everything, you understand that this positioning was not by error. Because see that while Paul Biya is in front of lifting his little hand and has in his head that is the ruler, you see Chantal Biya outpaces him behind there. That is, you understand that this is the real president, and the one standing in front now is simply a figurehead. Simply a figurehead would at times absolutely little or no say with respect to what is going on in that country right now. If at the time it seemed really hard to believe, really hard to imagine, today at least, I think most Cameroonians and even the rest of the world is now very resolute that this is what is going on right now. Chantal does not allow Paul Biya to have audience with any international dignitary without her presence. Because she needs to be in the loop. She needs to be in the know of everything that is being said. She has to be there. This thing started, I was told, and gained steam when Emmanuel Macron visited Cameroon. The solid handshake and those few seconds, those few minutes that Macron spent exchanging with Frank Biya at the Unity Palace did not please Chantal one bit. And from that moment, she wanted to know exactly what is being cooked. So Chantal has infiltrated every nook and cranny in the administration of La République du Cameroun. Right now, everywhere, Chantal Biya has people who are giving her minute by minute reports on who is doing what, where, with whom, and for what purpose. This is what is going on right now. And then, to make sure that she cuts Paul Biya completely away from reality, there is no national dignitary, not one at this point in time, that sees Paul Biya. No, not one. I mean, not one. If you must see Paul Biya, you must have authorization from Chantal. And generally, Chantal will be there. My sources said, and I corroborated that by noticing that G. Reningono appeared to have had the same information as well, because I watched him talk about it. That during the papal visit, Chantal was particularly angry. Angry for at least two reasons. Reason number one, the Pope caused her to leave when she was having an audience with Paul Biya. And when she left, Frank Biya did not leave. Frank Biya stayed there, took part in a conversation that she thought by right she ought to be there and not Frank Biya. From that moment, the feud between Chantal and Frank has even increased an inch, beyond an inch. The feud has simply intensified. Chantal did not like that the Pope did that. But the Pope felt that he was about to have an exchange with a head of state. And so, after the camaraderie, the discussions, everybody left. Chantal and Frank Biya were still in. And at some point, the Pope couldn't bear it anymore and had to simply request that Chantal Biya leave them to have a conversation. But when she left, Frank did not leave. Frank stayed right up to the end of the conversation. What did they say? That's exactly what angers Chantal Biya, because right up to this moment, she can't tell. Did the Pope come to, take any a word from Paul Biya to the effect that Frank Biya would become his successor? That is exactly what Chantal cannot comprehend. And worse, Chantal recalls, And we all recall, because I said that here too, that just before the Pope left for Africa, he received Emmanuel Macron and his wife at the Vatican. And she believes strongly, my sources say, that they had a conversation about power alternation in Cameroon. And just so you know, and Chantal Biya now knows too very well, that Frank Emmanuel Biya has been received several times at even odd hours at the French embassy in Yaoundé. Yes, Frank Emmanuel Biya has been received several times and even at odd hours at the French embassy in Yaoundé. They even caused him to travel just before the arrival of the Pope. What did he go out there to do? What did he go to, to arrange? Was it a secret meeting? Although they claim he went to Switzerland, was there someone Macron sent so they could meet on a neutral ground to transmit to him whatever they had discussed with the Pope and were preparing, so that that conversation should be followed when the Pope eventually gets to Yaoundé? Because of Chantal Biya, that could explain why, while the Pope sent her out, Frank Biya stayed in, and this kind of conversation is exactly what Chantal does not want. And this is why Chantal could not stomach it. She had to storm a session at which Biya wanted to effectively materialize the appointment of Frank Biya as vice president, and said that was going to happen over her dead body. Today, as I'm talking, we are on the 3rd day of the month of May. A presidential election occurred in Cameroon on the 12th of October 2025. The results were proclaimed same month. Somebody was sworn in November. But right up until this day, there is no new government in place. Paul Biya himself announced in his end-of-year address on the 31st of December that he was going to name a new government in the days ahead. It did not happen. When he was addressing the youth of La République du Cameroun on the 10th of February 2026, Paul Biya again announced, he confirmed, he said, I have promised I will do this and not do, but in the days ahead. From the 10th of February, we've had the 10th of March. We've had the 10th of April, 2 more months. Today we're on the 3rd of May. In exactly 7 days, it will be 3 more months again after that second announcement. This is not what has happened before when Biya was taking mandates. But this particular one, Chantal Biya has embargoed the formation of any government in that country. Now, some in Chantal Biya's circle who have spoken to people that generally talk to me, make clear that Chantal is even nursing that idea that she herself, Chantal Biya, could become president and Ferdinand Gongo vice president. So while in La République du Cameroon are there looking wild cat about Frank and all of those things, Chantal has totally different ideas. How do I know this? Because when Chantal Biya sat with the lady with whom they are managing the resources of that country right now, you are seeing there by Chantal Biya Nathalie Mudiki. Nathalie Mudiki is the wife of Adolphe Mudiki. When you look at Nathalie and you look at Chantal, they're the same age range. You look at Mudiki and look at Paul Biya, they're the same age range. Nathalie Mudiki is the one running the SNH right now. That's the Société Nationale des Hydrocarbures. That's the National Hydrocarbons Company of Cameroon. That is extracting all the oil from the southern Cameroons. That structure is now being run by Nathalie Mudiki. Because her husband, Adolphe Mudiki, is completely senile. Doesn't even know where he is a lot of the time. A lot of efforts have been made to even remove him as Director General of SNH and get him replaced. But all of those efforts have been resisted very strongly by Chantal. Because the fact that Mudiki is finished, Paul Biya is down. Those are the two people literally managing petrodollars. All the money that comes from the petroleum sector in La République du Cameroun. So all of that now is in the hands of these two women. And that is why they are lavish like you have never ever seen before. And so therefore, using this strength, this advantage, Chantal has all the money she requires to get everyone she wants to get on her side. That is how, without waiting to have any word with Paul Biya, she fired Kavai Yege Jibril. Paul Biya of his own volition would never have fired Kavai Yege Jibril because Paul Biya did not want anyone younger, stronger, and who can be composmentist and think. Paul Biya wanted only people of his generation because it was easier for him to deal with them. But Chantal has a different thought. Chantal believed in other things. Chantal decided to do some kind of checks and balances because she said, after dealing a dead blow to Issa Chiroma Bakari and angering the people of the northern regions, they needed to be slightly gratified. And you know, Ray Buba is not in the far north. Ray Buba is in the north. Issa Chiroma Bakari is from the north. So she had to make that kind of reshufflement to compensate someone who assisted so strongly Chantal Biya in making sure that they squeezed Issa Chiroma Bakari until he escaped from the national territory. So Chantal did those changes. She kicked out Nyaji Fendi Marcel and kicked out Kavai Yege Jibril. She didn't need Biya's authorization. So for Chantal Biya right now, she is in charge, completely in charge. And Paul Biya, I pity those who are still screaming Biya, Biya, because Chantal Biya believes so strongly that this mandate belongs to her. Paul Biya, she says, was very tired, very exhausted, and even felt like he did not want to be president again. And of course, reason he never publicly announced his candidature. Because you recall, Paul Biya became candidate until he went out to campaign. At no moment did he present himself to the people as, this is me, I have decided to run for another term. We only saw him in Marwan. They thought he could try other cities, but the strength was not there. It could not work. So Chantal throws it in his face at will. This mandate is Chantal Biya's mandate. And so it will be run according to her personal dictates, whether Paul Biya likes it or not. And for that reason, she is not ready to share the space with anyone carelessly named called vice president that she has not approved. Those are some of the things that are coming up to play right now. And so while the people of the Republic of Cameroon are expecting the appointment of a vice president, it's not going. But Chantal Biya developed a smarter idea. Besides transforming Biya into her personal slave, and I say this to all those depacists who are there screaming, Paul Biya, le père, là, le père. Paul Biya is finished. Paul Biya is now a prisoner. L'homme lion is now a prisoner. I bet you, things that they've described to me, honestly, I don't have the courage to talk about them here. I'm not in Cameroon, that I'm afraid anything can happen to me right there. But to be honest, even for, just the fact that I'm another human being, and I looked at and get the description of what has been given, I said there are certain things that you just let go, that you don't talk about them because they are just so horrible. If you get this in graphic details, when you see it, you pity Paul Biya. But I think, like we always say, that the evil that men do lives with them. Biya is paying for what he sowed. Because it is terrible. I know from what was described to me, if the old man knew how to get death, pick him up right now, that would be the most glorious thing he will want. Because the torture he's getting now is unimaginable. Like I said, nobody meets Paul Biya, not even Frank Biya, if Chantal doesn't say so and she's not present, because she must listen to everything that is being said to him. Right now, that is how it is. And if she's not around, he's in seclusion. The whole president of the republic and the people of Cameroon are there making us, continent, grand pays, this, that, and all that. The petty people should be pitying themselves. Because a young lady of doubtful character who at some point actually operated from the viewpoint of what, I mean, a lot of people, not just me, described as prostitution. He is the one today running their country, suppressing the person whom they have revered and feared for at least 43 years. Someone described it like 2 young prostitutes. I'm afraid this is not how I want to call it. I said someone described it as, but that's not my description. But I just say 2 reckless women, as you can see there, are the ones running the Republic of Cameroon today. Chantal Biya understands the setup thoroughly. She knows that if there's a lot of time given to the people around her to decide, she could be disadvantaged. That is why she orchestrated the ongoing family feud. That family feud that now pits Frank Biya, Georges Gilbert Baumla, and Paul Biya against one another. And let us be clear here. Chantal Biya knows the truth. Chantal Biya knows that Georges Gilbert Baumla is Paul Biya's biological son. That's what Chantal Biya knows. Of course, that is the much that she has told people who talk to me. And she knows that Frank Emmanuel Biya was an adoptive son and is not the biological son of Paul Biya. That is why she and her camp have advised Georges Gilbert Baumla to ask for a DNA test. That's the greatest humiliation Paul Biya can have at this point in time. And you know, for the people of La République du Cameroun, I feel only pity. Pity because you sit there, you say you are able, but 30 million people, you find yourselves being dragged into the mud by an uneducated woman. Oh yes, I've been told that everyone who is in power in La République du Cameroun now and who hopes to maintain their position know that they pay allegiance to Chantal Biya, not to Paul Biya, to Chantal Biya. This is a fact. If you are doubting, ask Shandongo, Director General of ACN TV. If he can let any communique or any appointment decision coming from the presidency of the Republic to be read without first of all cross-checking if Chantal Biya is aware and has given her approval. He does that, that day wouldn't end with him as Director General of ACN TV. Shandongo knows this. He's aware of what I'm talking about. I say this, anybody with Shandongo, I know he sometimes watches, and definitely he'll be shaking his head and asking himself, but how does this man know? But this is the truth. That is where that country is right now. Over 30 million people are allowing themselves to be dragged into the mud in this fashion on the excuses that they want to see their children. Chantal Biya at some point had told herself that she could forge a friendship with Frank Biya and that they could, play together and all of those things and be able to understand themselves how to handle this issue of power. But it would appear at some point Frank Biya, made Chantal angry because she felt that he was already creating his own, his own état-major, creating his own gangs, and trying to set bases on which he would sideline her if he had his opportunity. Chantal Biya doesn't eat shit because she has even told some people. That's when they had this photograph. And of course, Grapevine has it that even before Paul Biya ever saw Chantal Biya to want to have something with Madame Viguru, that she had had some moments with Frank himself, and she had some moments with a number of people in the presidential circles. Yeah, among them there was Joseph Owona of blessed memory and quite others. Like I said, she was a free woman. And so, She hasn't forgotten that she faced early opposition from Frank, who didn't think it was commode for her to marry his father after he had known her. After even his cousin had known her. But it happened. And so today, Chantal tells herself, if she cannot become that president, then her son. You recall Madame Bongo Sylvia in Gabon, how she had totally taken the reins of power with her son Noureddin Bongo Valentin. Bongo Valentin. And so he had already taken the reins of power because Ali Bongo was sick and paralyzed and all of those kind of things. And so they had tasted and the power was already sweet, and mother and son were already planning a lot of things. So that's the same thing Chantal Biya has confided to some people, that while there is Frank Biya, there's also Frank Hertz. There's also Frank Hertz, who is her son. Of course, one of the twin, that she believes also has a legitimate right to become vice president. Why not president? Because he's just as adopted, as Chantal Biya says, he's just as adopted as Frank Biya. He says the only difference is that Frank Hertz did not give up his own father's name to bear Biya, but he is just as adopted as Frank Biya. Like I said, this is why all efforts are being made to put the presidential family right in the dust. Georges Gilbert Baoula is not laughing when he says that he wants a DNA test. You may think that, because some colonel has ordered him to come to the said to be listened, or to the groupement to be, interrogated, he'll be detained and he'll be thrown in jail and all of those things. Do not look at those things from an innocent point of view. There will be serious counterweight still within the security forces. Because do not forget, Galax Etoga, who is the Secretary of State in charge of the gendarmerie at the Ministry of Defense, is an appointee of Ferdinand Gongo. When you look at this picture tells you another thing. You see the position of Chantal. See Paul Biya's position, and you look at Ferdinand Gongo. A lot of things are being cooked. That matter, Georges Gilbert Baoula and Frank Biya, that has gone to the security operatives right now, is going to lead to a lot of trouble. I assure you, Cameroon will not be what anybody is thinking about. And then, even as a dark horse, Chantal Biya has another gentleman. As a dark horse, they call him Samuel Etofis. When I talk about these things, I laugh. A lot of people are seeing Samuel Etofis just going in and out of the presidency as he wants, reducing the Minister of Sports and the physical education to a kind of laughing stock and all of those things. People are just wondering what is going on. But I bet you there is so much wahala coming right ahead. The war that will happen in Cameroon, that war that is coming, will not be from outside. They have neutralized and outdone all those from outside of the system who could have brought the war, could have heard about the war. That war will be internal, but it will be bloody to levels never before known. As I talk to you, people talking to me are telling me they are doing everything to get their children out of the country. Because right now, no one knows when it could happen. Because the Bulu Betty, when I say the Bulu Betty Ekan, it's white, but the Bulus, specifically the Bulus, and some Ewondos are absolutely mad at what is happening. right now. You will recall that when Chantal Biya insists that Biya did not want power this time, she took the risk, did everything she could, used her henchman, Ferdinand Gongo, to receive all the elite, to receive the traditional rulers, to build a coalition that brought about the victory, that brought about the harassment of the Poles, to give Biya another victory. When she says this and insists that this mandate is her mandate, she doesn't mince her words. You will recall one Awa Haja, who came out in an audio and said that Paul Biya has not declared his candidature, and reminded people of Biya's approach, that always he will, at least in one way or the other, announce his candidature. And you saw what happened to her. She was disappeared until today. Chantal Biya doesn't negotiate. Chantal Biya doesn't pity. Chantal Biya doesn't hesitate. She pulls on the trigger once you cross her path. That's what Hawa Aja. Where is she until today? Nobody's talking again about Hawa Aja. She knew exactly what she was talking about at the time she spoke. And the truth was too bitter. The truth was too terrifying. It could not be admitted. That's exactly what it was. That's why Hawa Aja disappeared until today. So the Bulus are realizing that they have been played. That is why Marlene Mvutu, when she started making noise, she did not get traction among the Bulu people who were still so foolish to be thinking that power was in their hands. Marlene Mvutu had told them that where people are, our father is being humiliated, he's being degraded, he's being dehumanized, he's being tortured. We need to rise up, because any other mandate that is being taken now is not for Paul Biya, it's for Chantal. They thought Marlene was stupid. And nobody supported Marlene. She had to finally disappear into hiding because even her life was at stake from the same Chantal Biya. So the way things are right now, trust me, the clash of the titans is inevitable. France is pulling its strings in every way to ensure that no such thing happens after they install Frank Biya, because France has examined everyone and come to the conclusion that their best risk would be Frank Biya. France has already concluded. I'm talking to the people of the Apocalyptic Cameroon who are there making noise. Oh, monarchy, monarchy. The monarchy is already there. Even the law says that a text that comes before a fact cannot be applied to a fact that came before that text was put in place. So Paul Biya, by ratifying or by signing into law the constitutional provisions that create or that are creating the position of vice president, does not give him at the same time the power to appoint a vice president within this mandate. Because at the time he presented himself to the people, the succession channels were clear. It was still clear. The people knew that if I'm casting my vote for Paul Biya, if something happens to Paul Biya tomorrow, the president of the Senate will handle power for a certain period of time and organize elections, and some other person will take over the country. But today, Paul Biya gets on and says, okay, they have modified the constitution. There's a position of vice president. The vice president will complete the mandate of the president. No, that wasn't in agreement. That wasn't there while he was given that mandate. If this law came before the elections, it would make sense. But after the election, it doesn't make sense. But because Cameroon is not a state of law, that is why people even give themselves the energy to go debating who is Biya going to appoint now as vice president. Any appointment of vice president now is naturally illegal. But Cameroonians have come to agree that their state is a lawless country. And so anything can happen any day, anytime, anyhow, following the whims and caprices of the president of the republic. That's where we are right now. And so, while France has decided that it will be Frank Biya, Chantal Biya does not want to hear a one ear. And Chantal Biya has what it takes to front France. This is strange, eh? It may be strange to you, but note it. Take note that Cameroon has multiple forces, each of them jealous of the other. You have the presidential guard, it's a force on its own. You have the B, it's a force on its own. You have the normal army, it's a force. You have the force special, a force again on its own. The force special and the B are directly under the control of Ferdinand Gongo and the Israelis, not France. So this complexity should begin to open your mind to what is coming right ahead. The fire will not come from outside. They have neutralized everybody outside. It will come from within. Lessons to learn for the people of the southern Cameroons. Begin to pay attention to what is happening on your territory. That foreign country where you are will soon burn and will leave you alone if you don't take care. I have spoken. I would like to end this broadcast at this point. There is so much more that we'll be talking about in the days ahead. I'll be back here tomorrow for us to open just more dossiers concerning what is ongoing. Like I said, anytime the news breaks, we will meet here to make sense out of it. I'll make sure the people of the southern Cameroon do not get up someday and say they were taken by surprise for one reason or the other. No, that should not happen. Just continue to pay attention. I want to thank all of you who were part of this broadcast. If this is the first time that you are showing up on this platform, please, you're welcome. Go right ahead and hit on that subscribe button so that anytime something new drops here, you will be the first to know. And also make sure to share the link to this communication as much as possible. That's what we do here. We share the links always to make sure we continue to reach as many people as possible. And of course, do not forget to hit that like button. It goes a long way. But most importantly, drop a comment. Be part of the conversation. Be part of the liberation process of our dear motherland, the southern Cameroons. But in your comment, do not attack any individuals. Be constructive, stay on the facts. That's how we do it here. So thank you everyone for your very kind attention. All I need to say is to God be all the glory. Thank you very much.
Nothing can compare to the loving that we share. All your pain and sorrow will make you strong tomorrow. Got to get together and make this world better. So sing this song with me and set your mind and body free.
But you know, this really comes down to you and me. You have to join our pledge and play.